Good morning, good afternoon everyone. My name is Rudolf Seymour. I head up the international funding for Télécoms Sans Frontières. I'm very proud to be part of such an amazing organisation that does so much for so many. I would like to thank Layer123 for their continued support and invitation to the World Congress this year. Today I would like to update everyone on the work we've been doing in 2020 against the backdrop of COVID-19 and outline how we have adapted our response during this pandemic. Since 1998, TSF have deployed in over 140 crises around the world. This covers more than 70 countries, helping over 20 million beneficiaries during that period. We have presence worldwide and as such are impacted by COVID-19. We're headquartered in France and we have regional offices in Asia Pac and South America, alongside very important representation in the UK and the United States. During COVID-19 we've faced many challenges, like all global organisations, and have had to adapt what is the new normal in today's world. TSF's core mission is unchanged. Our mission is simple, to provide communications for life and connect the unconnected. In practice, this is not so simple. In the backdrop of COVID-19, it's presented an extra set of challenges, but our core mission is unchanged. Like other organisations, we've had to adapt in order to continue the important work we do. The work we do covers 5 main areas. The first area is our disaster response. Our emergency response requires our rapid response teams to deploy anywhere in the world within 24 hours. We provide communications for not only the affected population through free calls and Wi-Fi, but also connectivity to other NGOs and local responders, where we can provide high-speed Ka satellite connections in order that other NGOs can carry out their coordinations. We also provide education programs, long-term education programs. In Syria, for example, we see a country that has basically, through the military action, stolen an entire generation and education of children. TSF try to provide robust education programs to the affected population in Syria. We also, with our protection and assistance programs, we have deployed innovative tools for communities impacted by climate change, long-term conflict, leading to large population displacements and other social issues. We've created open source data collection, management and monitoring systems to deal with the food crisis in Guatemala's dry corridor, to implementing information diffusion systems for protection of migrants in transit and asylum seekers in Mexico. In our capacity building programs, we understand how important it is to actually provide training to local responders so that they can be self-sufficient in terms of troubleshooting telecom equipment and are capable of setting up communications in an emergency situation. So TSF organises training workshops for NGOs and local governments across the world in order to build up their self-sufficiency, and we have completed workshops in Myanmar, Ecuador, Indonesia and the Philippines. We've also developed programs in order to bridge the digital divide. With over half the global population actually not having access to online technologies, there's a large disparity to information communication technologies across the world. At TSF, we implement different activities providing ICT access and training to ensure isolated communities can realise the benefits of the digital economy. And as part of this work, and in conjunction with IT Cup, we set up 2 centres in Madagascar and Burkina Faso, including providing the population with access to computers, internet, printers and scanners. TSF have realised that technology is an essential tool to help the most vulnerable remotely. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact on all countries and sectors, and has brought the most advanced economies and health systems to their limits. Without the immediate support, the consequences of the pandemic on poorer and less developed nations could be and will be catastrophic. TSF has mobilised its contacts developed during 20 years of humanitarian operations in the field to contribute to the fight against this virus. Social distancing, quarantines, border closings, the need to limit the spread of COVID-19 has led to travel limitations and, of course, proximity to others. However, the most vulnerable continue to require our assistance, even more so at this time. TSF has therefore worked to ensure the continuity of all the ongoing projects that we have in place today, and implement a distance learning through new initiatives. And this has been incredibly important with the current programs that we run. At Télécoms Sans Frontières, we have provided internet connections to protect the Syrian population from COVID-19. The spread of COVID-19 in this war-torn country would be catastrophic. According to the World Health Organization, only 64% of public hospitals are functioning in Syria. The national healthcare system is already struggling due to the war and the casualties this has caused, and it's simply not ready to deal with a COVID-19 outbreak. TSF has increased the number of life-saving connections for medical teams in the country to ensure they are better equipped to face such a challenging situation, with a total of 9 hospitals and medical centres currently connected. Since the beginning of our operations in Syria, TSF has connected 57 medical centres with a total of more than 36 terabit of data exchange. But behind these numbers, there is something much more valuable. Lives have been saved. Despite the extremely difficult situation linked to COVID-19, a country like Syria, where the healthcare has been worn out after 10 years of war, and medical centres are often the target of military operations, at Télécoms Sans Frontières we continue to support those local medical teams in order to assist the most vulnerable people. These vulnerable people are the most at risk in such a complex humanitarian crisis. At Télécoms Sans Frontières, we have also adapted our information diffusion systems for migrants in Mexico. Mexico had its first cases of COVID-19 back in January, and they now have nearly 800,000 cases and over 80,000 deaths. This is one of the highest per capita rates in the world, and as such the government has declared a state of emergency. But an extremely important question remains to be answered. What about the migrants? Mexico is a transit country for migrants, often from Central America, who are forced to leave their place of origin for survival or economic reasons. Thousands come into the country every day to stay there or to reach the United States. In the context of pandemic and containment, these already vulnerable populations have become even more vulnerable. Their need to access information is even more vital. So at Télécoms Sans Frontières, we have adapted our migrant centres to contain the pandemic and above all ensure that we protect the beneficiaries of these centres. Currently, the information systems provide information to around 700 migrants every day, and now provide the latest information on COVID-19. At Télécoms Sans Frontières, we have been running long-term education programs for Syrian refugee children for a number of years now. As a result of COVID-19, over 1.5 billion children or young people have been affected around the world in terms of continued education due to the confinement measures. At Télécoms Sans Frontières, we've tried to adapt these programs. As a result of the pandemic, we've had to close 2 of our regional education centres and move to a distance learning model. Our local team is in contact with the parents of the children through use of WhatsApp groups and other online platforms specially developed by our engineering teams. This allows the refugee children to continue their learning in Arabic, mathematics and computer science. In this situation, families do not have access to internet. They don't have smartphones or computers at home. So TSF provides internet data packages and tablets so everyone can continue their distance learning. At Télécoms Sans Frontières, one of the biggest challenges we've faced due to COVID-19 is actually the challenge of deployment. As you can imagine, in normal circumstances, there are significant difficulties in mobilising teams with the right equipment anywhere in the world within 24 hours. With border closures, suspension of international flights, COVID testing requirements, we've had to work around that in order to continue to assist victims of natural and man-made disasters. In the event of a natural disaster, travel restrictions and compulsory quarantine measures still in force in several countries could really limit the possibilities of deploying TSF teams on the ground. But we remain fully mobilised and have made every effort to ensure the support for these vulnerable populations and the humanitarian coordination required despite these deployment difficulties. During the last 2 months, TSF have carried out 2 emergency deployments. The first was in August 2020 where we deployed a team to Beirut in the aftermath of the port explosion. On the 4th of August, 2 huge explosions took place in the port of Beirut in Lebanon. The accident caused 180 deaths and over 6,500 casualties, forcing another 300,000 people out of their homes. The number of sudden casualties requiring urgent assistance basically overwhelmed the national healthcare system, which was already struggling to treat COVID-19 patients. So at Telecoms Sans Frontières, we set up a call centre to allow disaster victims to report their needs, whether it be medical, psychological, or financial aid. And this has been in place now for just over 2 months. The second deployment this year in the face of COVID-19 was in September. Telecoms Sans Frontières deployed a rapid response team to Lesbos, Greece, in the aftermath of the huge fire at the migrant camp there. We were on the ground within days, and our team installed an internet connection to cover the COVID-19 quarantine area. And this was at the Karatepe camp, where asylum seekers have already tested positive for COVID-19, and this is the area where they are hosted. The internet connection installed basically offers a free link to the outside world, to people who have not only been living in harsh conditions for months or even years, but who have also had to suffer the trauma of seeing their already precarious lives devastated by fires, and now also have the added issue of COVID-19. So this was an incredibly important connection that we had to put in place in an emergency response scenario. As many of you may know, TSF are supported by the corporate world. We are lucky enough to have some great partners from the telco and tech community. Indeed, 75% of our funding is provided by the telecoms and tech industry, and our actions are only possible thanks to our partners. In these unprecedented times, support is needed more than ever. COVID-19 has added significant costs to TSF operations, not only in its long-term programs, but also in its emergency deployments. So I urge you to go to our website at tsfi.org and click the support page there and see how maybe you can help and support the work we do. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that everyone has a great conference. Thank you very much.